In the last stream, we were working on mostly trying to craft the Applied Energistics 2 controller, bringing together all of the different mods that we've been using so far: the Pressure Chamber from Pneumaticraft, the Starlight Infuser from Astral Sorcery, the Blood Altar from Blood Magic, and the Dissolution Chamber from Industrial Foregoing. And right at the end of the last episode, we managed to get the controller down, get it powered, and connect up all of the different parts that we also made, including this ME crafting grid, the ME drive with its associated ME storage cells, and the storage bus, which is down on our drawer controller, to give us access to all of the items in our storage drawer setup. And all of that work essentially gives us the exact same usability that we had previously with our simple storage network. And so currently, this hasn't really been of much use. But as I mentioned at the end of the last episode, we're going to be able to use the extra features of Applied Energistics 2 to make this so much better and so much more useful. However, before we get started with any of that, the first thing that I need to address in today's stream is this horrendous energy cable that I ran over here at the end of the last episode as a way of temporarily getting power to the controller. So I'm going to get rid of this cable, and we're going to replace it using the Flux Networks mod. This is a super nifty mod that's going to allow us to wirelessly move the power generated by our reactor over here to all of the different machines and controllers and whatever it is that need power around the base. To get started with this, we just need two things. We need one flux plug and one flux point. It's kind of hard to see the text there, but trust me, flux plug, flux point. There's also optionally the Flux controller, which we are going to make because, as the tooltip shows here, this enables wireless charging on your Flux network. The idea there being that we can use that wireless charging to wirelessly refill our jetpack so that we don't have to continually run on over to the reactor every time the power gets low on our jetpack. And so, in order to get started with any of this, the first thing that we are going to need is some flux dust. In fact, I think there's a quest line for it down here. There is. The flux dust here can be made in one of two ways. There is the standard way, and there is the B way. This is one of those situations where I think the standard way is actually going to be the better way for us. All you have to do is take some obsidian, you can then take some redstone, and you can actually take as much redstone as you like here, and in order to make flux dust, you place the obsidian one block above the bedrock. And by that, I mean there's a 1 block gap between the bedrock and the obsidian, so I guess 2 blocks above the bedrock. You throw the redstone in on top of the bedrock, and then you left-click the obsidian. For example, if we head on over here, we do have some bedrock down right about here. It's a bit finicky to get to because it's underneath our Astral Sorcery altar, but if we were to go ahead and throw the obsidian down here, we can then throw, ideally, a fair bit of redstone dust under here, and then left-click the obsidian, and that's going to transform basically all of the redstone into flux dust. The one stack that didn't get transformed there, I think, was probably either too close to me or we picked it up just before the obsidian slammed down. Either way, that is a ton of flux dust. Again, you could do this with a bee, but it means going through the whole rigmarole of getting the bee, which I don't think is too expensive. I think it's a redstone bee and a lava bee here. And then after that, we'd also have to get the flux bee nectar block, put that down, take up a spot in our apiary, and then slowly wait for those combs to come in. It does work, but I think this is way faster and fairly easy. And so, now that we have the flux dust, all of these recipes require flux cores. These are made with Eyes of Ender. We can go ahead and make, ideally, a stack of those. We've got enough blaze rods at this point to just go ahead and craft a stack of blaze powder. Not the most efficient way of doing it, but again, we've got them coming in indefinitely, so I'm not really too worried about that. And then we'll craft a stack of Eyes of Ender. That is then going to allow us to make a stack of flux cores here. These are just obsidian, the aforementioned Eyes of Ender, and some flux dust. And then from there, the flux point is just 4 flux cores with a block of redstone, and the flux plug is 4 flux cores with a flux block. The flux block here, again, same kind of stuff, flux dust and flux cores. Boom and boom. Nice. And then as far as the flux controller, this requires 5 flux blocks, 1 flux core, and 2 flux dust. And so again, we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, and boom, that gets us a flux controller. Nice. And so now let's go ahead and grab all of those, and we can begin setting this up. So first things first, the flux plug here is what receives energy. So we put this next to whatever generates power for us. In our case, it's the reactor. I'm going to put this right here. And if we right click on this, the first thing we need to do to get started with Flux Networks is create a new network. So we click the little plus in the top right. We'll call this Isaac's Power with an exclamation mark, and then we can pick a password. I think you do have to put a password in, but the password is never asked for, and so it doesn't really matter too much. And then down here, we can pick a color as well. I'm going to go for yellow for the bees. Create. And you can also see the other power networks from other people on the server. And at that point, all we have to do is click Isaac Power. And now this is connected to our network. And so over here, what we're going to do, we're going to get rid of this cable, at least all the way back to here. And then we can auto mine the rest of it. Fantastic. And then if we put down a flux point onto the controller, like this, the flux point is where the power gets sent. And so in here, we're going to go and select a network. We're going to select Isaac Power. And I think if you try and select somebody else's network, it will ask you for the password. But if you're trying to select your network, it will just assume that you have permission from yourself to access it. And now you'll see that this is outputting just shy of 20 FE per tick. And that is going to continually keep the ME controller full on power from our reactor without the horrendous cable running across the middle of the base. Nice. Now, as for the Flux controller, this can go down anywhere in the world. It really doesn't matter where you put it. And it's mostly the same idea here. We can select our network, Isaac Power, and then if we go over to the wireless charging tab, we can go ahead and select where we want wireless charging to apply. So you can't do it in your main inventory. You'll see it says disabled, but if you click anywhere else, you can turn on main hand, offhand, hotbar slots, armor slots, and curio slots. And armor slots for us are the most important here because right now you'll see we're at 747,000 FE in our jetpack. As soon as we hit apply after toggling enable wireless, we should start to see that our jetpack gets wirelessly charged. And it did. Look at that. We're up at 800,000 FE. And now, no matter how much flying we do, you'll see that the power doesn't really go down. It goes down to 799, but then it's instantly getting topped up with power from the reactor. And if we land, it'll go right back up to 800,000. And so now we effectively have a jetpack with an unlimited amount of power, assuming that the reactor here always has uraninite in it, is always making power, and therefore assuming that our uraninite B continues to produce uraninite for us. But for the most part, and for all intents and purposes, we do have unlimited power in our jetpack now, which is fantastic. And so we can kind of do the same thing with a lot of other machines here. We can kind of stop with the long running pipes all over the place for energy, which I think is going to be sensible for us. We probably aren't going to need many more flux plugs going forward, because when we need more power, we're almost certainly just going to upgrade the reactor here. But what we will need is a lot more flux points, because these need to go down basically anywhere that we want power. The good news is you can put these down and the system will just automatically distribute the power all over the place. You can specify priority. For example, here, I will give the ME controller super high priority because I always want the controller to get power before really anything else in our base, because we need to be able to access our system. But what we can do here, we can also go ahead actually and grab a Flux configurator. This isn't strictly necessary, but the benefit here is that you can shift right click onto a Flux point. That will copy the configuration. And then if we take the other Flux points here, we can go ahead and place those down, for example, onto our centrifuges like this. And then we can just right click with the Flux configurator, and that's going to auto configure them to our network. And so now the centrifuges can get power from these flux points, which means we can kind of go ahead and get rid of the remaining cables here. Now, of course, there are other machines connected, but I think what we'll probably look to do here, because this whole setup is currently a little bit horrible, and so what I think we'll do is we'll maybe go ahead and have some energy pipe running in the ground, potentially like this, and then we can move some of our other machines, like our metallurgic infuser and our enrichment chamber here, over onto that energy pipe, for example, here and here, and then that's going to just be, for one, much less janky, and for two, we can also go ahead and just throw down another flux point like this, right click it, boom, and now all of these machines are going to get power without having to run a cable all the way over to the reactor. Chat is right here that in copying the controller point, I did copy the priority, which is not what I wanted to do. Thankfully, again, we can just change the priority here, shift, right click to copy that configuration, and then go and paste that onto all of these. Again, just to make sure that it's only the controller that has the super high priority. Okay, so I moved a few more things around. I moved the dissolution chamber over here, and I've tried to tidy this up a little bit back here as well. The setup is still the same. We will move these inscribers as well at some point. But for now, we actually do have more processors in here. I did make a couple more between streams. We've got more logic, we've got a ton more engineering, and we've got some calculation still. And so now I do want to start utilizing some of those aforementioned features of Applied Energistics 2. And I think we're going to start with A2's ability to autocraft. So for autocrafting, there is a few things we need to do. We are going to need to get a pattern terminal. We're also going to have to get some blank patterns. Let me bookmark this, and let's bookmark this. We're also going to need to get a molecular assembler, at least one, potentially multiple, as well as another ME interface as well, potentially multiple. We're going to need a crafting unit, and we're going to need not necessarily a crafting co-processing unit, although that could come in handy at some point in the not-so-distant future. And so in here, let's first see about making this ME pattern terminal. The ME pattern terminal here requires another ME crafting terminal, and so thankfully, what we should be able to do here is make yet more of the formation and annihilation cores, and we should also be able to complete the quest here as well, because the quest previously did not complete for this, so let's do that. Fantastic. Then let's upgrade that again, just like we did in the last episode. If we have enough logs, which we do, to make planks for a crafting table, we can make the ME crafting terminal, get the quest for it, and then we can upgrade that to the ME pattern terminal. Now, one thing I didn't do in the last episode that I did want to do actually is I did want to swap out our Flux cable for a different color of Flux cable, because we do have some Flux cable in here. And one thing you can do here is you can take, for example, yellow dye, craft that around with Flux cable, and that makes you the yellow ME glass cable. It's not any different, functionally speaking, but the benefit is that it can change the color of your terminals. And given that we've got our bees around, I feel like this is quite fitting. And so now what we can do is something like this and like this, and now we have our pattern terminal, which is very similar, but it has this pattern terminal section at the bottom. The reason we need that is to encode these blank patterns. These are made with iron, glowstone, Certus quartz, and quartz glass. Again, I'll make really as much quartz glass as we can, which apparently is not much. We could do with maybe looking at automating that today, but we can now use this to craft blank patterns, and these blank patterns can be placed inside of the pattern terminal, and now we can use this to encode a recipe into that blank pattern. Again, we'll come back to that in a second. Before we do that, let's see about getting a molecular assembler. This, super easy. It is more formation cores, more annihilation cores, more iron, another crafting table, and some more quartz glass. Of all things, it's always the quartz glass. That is fine. In terms of making quartz glass, we do have to keep making the quartz dust. And as far as quartz dust is concerned, we could potentially do with either making a crusher or a pulverizer to make this much easier on us. And so I think we will go with the crusher here, just because we can upgrade this more in the future to these different factory variants that are going to make it much, much faster. In terms of making the crusher, it's not particularly difficult. We need 2 buckets of lava, which we actually might not have because we have been using our lava over here. Never mind, we've got a ton of lava still, thankfully, in this jumbo tank. We'll dump that back in the system. Just like we did before for the enrichment chamber, we also need 2 more basic control circuits, which is just 2 more osmium with some more redstone. Again, I do need to reconfigure this actually to number of items and descending. There we go. That's going to allow us to make even more of the basic circuits over in here. 4 redstone, 2 osmium. And then the final piece of the puzzle, of course, as per usual, is yet another steel casing, which we can do very easily with one of our PT machine frames. And not too long later, we have another steel casing. And of course, over here, our metallurgic infuser is done with its basic control circuits. And so we can craft those with the buckets of lava to get the crusher. Nice. And we can throw that down over here. And we can now use this to begin grinding down our nether quartz. Now, by default, not super fast. In fact, actually probably slower than us grinding it over here in the grindstone by hand. Of course, the benefit is that we don't have to do it by hand. Although, there are speed and energy upgrades that we can put into the MEKANISM machines to make them faster. To make the speed upgrades, we just need infused alloy, glass, and osmium dust. And then for the energy upgrades, it's the same, but just with gold dust. And the osmium dust here can be made using the crusher, I'm pretty sure. If I put the osmium in the crusher, that should crush down into osmium dust. The infused alloy is made in the metallurgic infuser in the exact same way as we were just making the control circuits, but with iron instead of osmium. So if we do this, that's going to go ahead and start making those very slowly again. You can put speed upgrades in all of these and make all of this a lot faster. In fact, it's probably going to be sensible for us to look at upgrading the metallurgic infuser first, just so that we can speed up the rate at which the infused alloys come in. The idea here is fairly straightforward. We can craft a speed upgrade, like so, and then you can just shift right click that into a machine. If you want to get it back out again, you click the little upgrades tab over here, you click on the speed upgrade, you click uninstall, you can take it out. You can also put them in here as well, like this, and it'll get installed. It's just faster to shift right click them in. And in doing so, this is now using more power, but it is also a lot faster. And we can kind of keep doing that with more osmium dust and more of these infused alloys, and we can keep making more and more of these speed upgrades. You can put a maximum of 8 speed upgrades into any one machine. You'll see this has gone up from 34 to 112.46 RF with 3 speed upgrades in, and we are now getting these infused alloys faster. The benefit of the energy upgrades is that it reduces the energy requirement of the machines. So you can put the energy upgrades in without any speed upgrades, but it doesn't do anything. The energy upgrades, all they really do is they reduce the amount of power consumed by the speed upgrades. So it's kind of only really worth putting energy upgrades in once you've put speed upgrades in to bring the power usage down. Because you'll see right now, this is using over 1,000 redstone flux per tick, which is fine because we can generate up to 12,000. But ideally, what we could also look at doing here is we could look at getting a little bit of gold to try and get some gold dust over in our crusher. And again, one nice thing here is you can go and just take out all of these and put them in over here. Shift click on uninstall, by the way, to uninstall them all at once. And once we've got a couple of pieces of gold dust, I guess we'll go for 8. Perfect. We can then take those out. Over here, we can then do the exact same thing for the energy upgrades. We can go boom and make sure you have these, Isaac. Boom. That gets us, ideally, 8 of these. And then over here, you'll see that right now we're using over 1,000 RF per tick. If we install these energy upgrades, that goes down to a much more palatable 113 redstone flux per tick, despite having 7 speed upgrades in. And so let's go ahead and take those back out temporarily. We'll take out both the speed and energy upgrades, and we'll put those back in over here to get even more of the infused alloy. For that, we're going to need even more redstone. That's not a problem. Let's do something like this. I do promise this is all coming back to Applied Energistics to Autocrafting in just a second, chat. For now, though, what I would like to do is get at least 8 speed and energy upgrades into both machines. So this metallurgic infuser is just 1 speed upgrade away. So now this is as fast as it can possibly go, and it's using just 200 redstone flux per tick, which is not too bad. And then once we have 16 of these infused alloys, we should then be able to use, I guess, all of these speed and energy upgrades here over in the crusher to make all of the osmium and gold dust required for 8 more speed and energy upgrades for the metallurgic infuser, at which point both of these machines are going to be working as fast as they possibly can, at least in their current form. We can actually take things a little bit further in that we can turn these into factories. And I've actually miscalculated here. I need twice as many infused alloys. I need 32, not 16. That's fine. Again, let's do this. For now, that's going to use a lot of power, but that's not too big of an issue. 2,000 redstone flux per tick is a lot, but we do have that much power available to us. But we can go ahead and upgrade to factory variants of these machines. And those factory variants are going to allow us to process even more items even faster. And so let's do a quick one of these, and let's get you in there. So now both of these are at max speed, and they are as efficient as they can be at that speed. But if we wanted to take it further, which we could do, we don't necessarily need to. Like if we take the nether quartz here and we put this in, it's now substantially faster than it was before. And of course, it is substantially faster than us using the grindstone. But if we wanted to, there are conversion kits that we can use to upgrade these machines. I believe they're called installers. We have the basic, the advanced, the elite, and the ultimate. The basic tier installer here is 2 basic control circuits, 4 redstone, 2 iron, and 1 plank. The only thing we're missing there is the 2 basic control circuits, which now, thankfully, we can make much faster over in here. Fantastic. And then back over here, let's make that basic installer. And now if we right-click this onto either of the machines, it will transform it, shift right-click it onto either of the machines, it will transform it from a regular crusher into a crushing factory, or from a regular metallurgic infuser into, I believe, an infusing factory. In fact, let's go ahead and do it over here as well. Let's do one of these. Boom, boom, and boom. Look at that. Nice. And so now the idea here is that this can do 3 lots of crushing at a time. And so one thing you can do here is you can turn auto sort on the left, and now any item put in here is automatically distributed amongst all of the slots and automatically crushed. It does use triple the amount of power, but it's essentially 3 crushers in one. And if we wanted to, we could take it further. We could go up to the advanced installer here. This requires even more of the infused alloy, so even more redstone and iron over in the metallurgic infuser, which again, now we can turn auto sort on. We can make these even faster. And we do need 2 advanced control circuits. These are made with basic control circuits and infused alloy. So let's get, I guess, even more redstone here. This does get a little redstone expensive. You can make the redstone more efficient by running it through the enrichment chamber here first. Because right now, if I put 1 piece of redstone in, we get 10 millibuckets worth of liquid redstone. Whereas if we run it through the enrichment chamber ahead of time, we get enriched redstone, which is then 8 times more efficient. Here you get 80 millibuckets worth of redstone. So that is something we could look at doing. And of course, we can put the same speed and energy upgrades into this enrichment chamber that we've done for the infusing factory and the crushing factory. But for us, for now, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's get some more of these basic control circuits, and then let's use those to make, ideally, 4 advanced control circuits. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, ideally, 2 of these advanced tier installers. We are just missing a plank, of all things. Of course we are. We could really do with setting up those wood bees again, so that we can get kind of wood coming in automatically, especially, oops, that's not what I want to do, especially once we get autocrafting up and running. That would be tremendously useful. And now we can go ahead, shift right click, and shift right click, and we now have an advanced crushing factory that can crush 5 items at a time, and an advanced infusing factory that can infuse 5 items at a time. Pretty nifty stuff. You do have to go through each tier individually, by the way. You can't just jump to the highest tier. You have to make the basic, then the advanced, then the elite, then the infused. But now, the whole point of that was to make the production of quartz dust here substantially faster, so that going forward, if we need more quartz glass, which I do think we need a lot of for AE2, we can just come and grab it very quickly and use it to make more quartz glass. Nice. And we could probably even do with getting some more glass at some point fairly soon. Let me quickly kind of preempt that by putting some more sand in over here. I have continued to put even more ancient debris into our furnaces, to the point where I think we're actually very, very close to being able to upgrade our centrifuge to the elite centrifuge, at least one of them, because right now we do have over 1,000 netherite scrap, and so I think we should be able to make all of the netherite blocks that we need. Let me craft these down, and then let's craft those into blocks. How many blocks of netherite can we make? We can make 29 blocks of netherite, which is definitely not enough, unfortunately. We do need, I think, at least 36 to make this work. In fact, I think 36 is an understatement, because you need 4 here. So I think, again, it might be 39 blocks of netherite that we need. But that is coming together pretty quickly. We can come back to that later on today to see if we can get that higher tier centrifuge. But now that we have quartz glass, pivoting back over here, we should be able to make our first molecular assembler. And the idea with the molecular assembler here is that we can use this for autocrafting. Now, in order to autocraft with this molecular assembler, though, we do need the ME interface. Again, that is, you guessed it, more formation cores. I'll make a few of these because they are needed quite regularly throughout the mod, and more annihilation cores. Again, same idea here. This does need Flux dust. Again, another benefit of having the crusher now is that over here we can just go ahead and drop in multiple stacks of Flux crystals, and that's going to very quickly get us multiple stacks of Flux dust. And again, we'll make multiple of these, and we'll get an ME interface. So at this point, we can go ahead and throw this down. So let's do something like this, something like this, and something like this. So putting down the ME interface next to the molecular assembler gives the molecular assembler access to the patterns that we're going to put inside of the ME interface. I believe if you want, you can get a wrench, and I think you can kind of rotate this with its little arrow there to point into the molecular assembler. I don't think it's strictly necessary. I think it will work nonetheless, but if you wanted to cram things into close proximity, doing it like this points this ME interface at this molecular assembler. And so now what we can do is we can use this to autocraft. If we wanted to, for example, autocraft the crafting of oak logs into planks, we could go in here, we could put an oak log in, and we can click encode pattern. What we now have is a pattern that has this recipe stored within it. And if we place that pattern into this ME interface, we are essentially teaching this molecular interface how to craft this recipe. Or we're telling the AE system that if it sends an oak log to this molecular assembler, it will get back 4 oak planks. Now, in order to actually do any autocrafting, in here, there is a button at the top where you can view sorted/craftable. You can change this to just craftable, and you'll see right now the only thing that our system knows how to craft is the oak planks. Alternatively, if we type in plank here, if you have none of the item in your system, it will still show it, but it'll say craft. Alternatively, if you hover over your item, even if you have items in there and you middle mouse click, it will bring this up. Quick point of information here. By default, in this pack, sort inventory under cursor is set to middle mouse button. If you don't click this and click escape and get rid of that key binding, it won't work. But if you do get rid of that key binding, back in here, if we type in plank, we can just middle mouse click over the planks, and then we can specify what we want to craft. You can also do this if it's empty, by the way. So if you've got none here, you can just click instead of middle mouse clicking, and then you can specify how many you want to craft. Let's say I wanted to craft 10 planks. We could get to 10 by clicking these buttons, or you can just type it in here. You can type in 10, click next, and it will tell you that in order to do that, we need 2 logs, which we don't have, and we also need 40 bytes. And you'll see at the bottom here, we can't click start. The reason for that is that we don't have any crafting CPUs available. That, of course, is where this crafting unit comes into play. So the crafting unit here is fairly straightforward. It's 2 calculation processors, 1 logic processor, some iron, and some Flux cable. And then to actually craft this into a usable CPU, we need to craft it with a storage component. Again, 1K, 4K, 16K, and 64K are the options. The bigger the crafting CPU, the more complex crafts you can do. That one craft we were just looking at doing was just a 40-byte craft, which is nowhere near the 1024 bytes that a 1K drive can handle. But if you want to do some really big crafts, you're going to have to go with the 64K storages later on down the line. For us, for now, what we should be able to do is the exact same thing we did in the last episode. We should be able to get 3 buckets of honey, drop those over into our dissolution chamber, 1, 2, 3, and then if we craft that up with some Certus quartz, I think we needed 4 Certus quartz, 3 redstone, and a logic processor. If memory serves me right, let's see if that works. We're going to go boom, boom, and boom. That should get for us a 1K ME storage component, which we can then craft with our crafting unit here to get a crafting storage, which is the same as a crafting CPU. So if we do this and this, we get a 1K crafting storage. We can go ahead and place that down really anywhere, so long as it's connected to the AE2 system in some way, shape, or form, and so long as it's online, it will work. And so now, if we were to go and try this again, real quick, let me get like a couple of planks so we can at least try and show a decent craft here. Let me get a couple of logs here. Let's do this. Back over here with 27 logs, we can put these in, and now if I go to try and craft those planks, I can go for 10, next, and you'll see that it has automatically chosen the one crafting CPU that we have available, which is this one on my left here. I'll click start, and over here, we should see it begin to craft these oak logs into oak planks. And in here, previously we had 2 oak planks, and eventually we should get more of them. Now, I can't help but notice that this is offline, which surprises me. I don't think you have to power this directly. Although maybe you do actually, look at that. Fair enough. I thought it could receive power through the ME interface. I was sure it could receive power through the ME interface, but with that hooked up, this now does work, and you'll see that it made some planks for us. It did make more than we asked for. That's just because you have to make planks in sets of 4, and so I asked for 10, it made me 12, and those are now done. You can even take this one step further though, because if I go and I teach another pattern, let's say I teach how to make a chest and encode, what we can do here is we can kind of nest the crafts, because with this, we can take our chest pattern, we can put this in here, and now in here, let's imagine we have no planks at all. We're going to take all the planks out. We just have the logs. Now, if I want my system to make a chest for me, it's going to do both stages of the craft. It's going to craft first the 8 planks that are required, and then it's going to go ahead and craft the chest. I'm being told this is to do with the fact that I've put the arrow here. Let me change that. You know what, let me just break this and replace it, because I think if we get rid of this cable and we just put down the ME interface without right-clicking it, it does seem to pass power on through, so don't do that. Don't do the right-clicking. But either way, if we have both these in here and I go to request a chest, it will first make the planks, then it will make the chest. Nice, and look at that. We have a chest for us. And so you can really use this quite aggressively. You can do a lot of cool stuff with this because you can really nest the crafts a lot, to the point where if you have a lot of stuff taught to your system, you can then request some pretty complex crafts later on down the line. Now, currently we only have access to 9 patterns here, so we can only put a maximum of 9 patterns per molecular assembler. You can put multiple ME interfaces on to one molecular assembler, and that will give you access to more patterns. The only downside to that is that the molecular assembler is only so fast. You can put up to 5 acceleration cards in here to make it even faster at crafting, but the more ME interfaces you have around it, and the more crafts you try and do with just one molecular assembler, the kind of slower it's going to be, because of the fact that some recipes will be waiting to get crafted whilst other recipes are being crafted, if that makes sense. But we do effectively have autocrafting up and running here, and if we wanted to, we could even expand this autocrafting to machines as well. If we were to get another ME interface, you can actually put these directly onto machines like this. This is where you do want to have the arrow pointing down. Let's do this. There we go. Perfect. And if we got this connected up to our AE2 system, which again, I'm going to very temporarily here, chat, do using a slightly horrible method of just running a long cable over there. But if we were to connect this up with some more of this Flux cable, we should be able to teach our system how to craft with this ME interface as well. So if I were to run this all the way over like this is going to come online. And now over in here, what we want to do is we want to go to our pattern terminal, and we want to basically change this from crafting pattern to processing pattern. And so now, let's say we wanted to teach our system how to make the quartz glass, right? For quartz glass, the quartz glass itself is a recipe that we can teach inside of the molecular assembler, right? We can do this and encode. And temporarily, I'm going to take this chest pattern out. And if you shift right click these, by the way, you can wipe the pattern. So I'm going to put this back in. Over in here, we actually did that incorrectly. Hold on. I need to wipe that. In here, I need to swap this back to crafting mode so that we can teach it this recipe, encode. And then we need to put that back in here. And then we need to switch it to the processing mode for the quartz dust, because here we're going to teach it that quartz equals quartz dust inside of the crusher. Now, for some reason, this is being a little bit finicky with me, but if I do this manually, like this, we can click encode, and now we have a pattern that says that 1 nether quartz equals 1 quartz dust. If we place that over here, what we can do inside of the crushing factory, we can go to the side configuration. We can make sure the top is set to input. I think we also want to set the top to output. So we want to make it purple, which means it's input and output. Shift left click, by the way, to fully clear any side of any input and output. But for us, if we just left this as input and we went to go request some quartz dust, what would happen is it would send the required quartz over to the crusher and it would make the dust. But now the dust is stuck in the crusher. What we need to do is we need to set this to input and output, and we need to turn auto eject on. What that's going to do is that's going to take the quartz, turn it into quartz dust, and then it's going to push it back up into the ME interface. And I hope that that allows it to go back around into the system. I think it does. We got 1 quartz dust there. Let me see if that does work. If I try and get 10 or 11, I guess, and start, I'm hopeful that this just works. It totally does. Look at that. We now have 11 quartz dust available to us in the system. Nice. And so now, again, let's say we go ahead and take all of the quartz dust out of here. We have multiple stacks, but let's say we have none. And let's say I wanted some quartz glass. I can now click start. Let's say I want 20. Next, it's going to go ahead and first turn all of our 25 nether quartz into nether quartz dust. Then it's going to take the glass that we already have, craft it with that quartz dust over in the molecular assembler, and it's going to give me back quartz glass, which is pretty nifty stuff. It means that in total now, we don't really have to do any of the work involved in making the quartz glass. We can just request that it be made, and the system will make it for us. And of course, we can kind of expand that to a ton of other stuff. We can expand it to our infusing factory, to our enrichment chamber, even to the dissolution chamber here as well. It's also probably going to be well worth it for us to get an energized smelter. This is basically an electric furnace from MEKANISM, which also has the same ability to be sped up with the speed upgrades to be made into a factory with the different installers, and therefore be made very, very fast, especially compared to the archaically slow regular Minecraft furnaces that we have currently making all of our stuff. Because if we had an energized smelter, we could again put another one of these ME interfaces down. That would allow us to then auto smelt any sand that we had into glass, thus automating this one step further. There is one small thing that you have to bear in mind when working with AE2 that we've not mentioned up until now, and that is the channels system. Unlike a mod like Refined Storage, where you can kind of just put down whatever you want, wherever you want, AE2 is a little bit more finicky in that there are channels that limit how many items you can put down on a given side of the ME controller. So each side of the ME controller here essentially has access to a maximum of 32 channels If you're using this standard cable, though, you can only access 8 of them. And essentially, each item on the line takes up 1 channel. So right now, we've kind of got a lot of stuff connected to the same side. But right now, for example, over here, I think this only counts as 1 item. I don't think this counts as 2 channels. One way we can figure that out, though, actually, is by getting some smart cable. The smart cable here is smart in that it will show us what we are using. So to make it, we need to craft some Flux cable with some wool. That's easy enough. I think we might need 4 of this. And then we can then craft that with redstone and glowstone to make the smart cable here. If I were to break this and replace it with smart cable, it is hopefully going to inform me of the amount of channels used. And you can see somewhat here that 1 line was filled up. You see there's 1 blue line there out of 8. I believe we're using 1 channel. If I were to, for example, take my pattern terminal and put that over here, we'll see the number of lines there go up from 1 to 2. Cool. And so if you try and put more than 8 things down on one side, and if you're only using the basic cable, the 8th item just won't work. So if you get to a point where you've put down, for example, 7 ME interfaces and your 8th ME interface doesn't work, it means you need to look back at your channel situation. If you want to access more channels, that's where you need dense cable. This dense cable here is how you access the full 32 channels per side. And so if you use dense cable, you can do 32 channels per side of the controller, which does give you a theoretical maximum of 192 items or 192 things with the 1 ME controller. Once you get past that, if you want to make your AE2 system even bigger, that is where you need to get multiple ME controllers, because you can put another one down next to your pre-existing one and turn it into a pseudo multi-block that then will have access to even more faces. And again, each face of the controller has access to the same maximum 32 channels. Just something to bear in mind, not something that we need to worry about just yet because we currently don't have that many items, but if you're new to AE2, the channel system can sometimes catch people off guard. So something to be aware of. Hopefully I explained that somewhat well. And so now that that is taken care of, going forward, we can go ahead and expand out our autocrafting, which we definitely will. We'll get more molecular assemblers and more ME interfaces to kind of autocraft as we go. But for now, I think what we can look at doing is upgrading this centrifuge. Again, to do that, we need more netherite, which means smelting more of our ancient debris. And so I do think, real quick, I'm going to go ahead and take yet another one of our PT machine frames, upgrade this to another steel casing, and then we'll use that to get another mechanism machine, this time the energized smelter, so that we can start smelting that netherite very quickly. And with the energized smelter, it's conceivable, I think, that we could potentially look at upgrading maybe all of the centrifuges to elite centrifuges. And then at that point, we can really start to look at potentially upgrading our apiaries to higher tiers as well, so we can start producing and processing even more resources. And again, the same rigmarole later. We've now got another steel casing. Let's use that to craft up our energized smelter. I did go ahead and make some more speed and energy upgrades because the Blood Altar does take quite a while to do that final bit of converting. And then do we have what it takes to make the first tier of installer? We do. And then do we have what it takes to make the second tier installer? I think the answer is probably yes. 2 advanced circuits and boom, nice. Okay, let's go ahead and get this guy down. We'll throw this down over here. We just need one more basic universal cable for this. Of course, we could put a flux point on every single machine, but for the time being, at least, that's not strictly necessary. Doing something like this will work just fine. We can then do one of these, and then boom and boom. And now we can smelt substantially faster than we could previously, to the point where if we take 5 stacks of ancient debris, we can throw all 5 stacks in here like this, and they're going to get smelted so much faster than they would have done previously. And then, of course, we could also get another ME interface here, and that's going to allow us to do 2 things, potentially. One is that we can set this again to input and output from the top. So if I do something like this, again, shift left click to clear it, and then purple at the top, oops, like that, with auto eject on, that's going to send all of the netherite scrap up and into our AE2 system. Again, we can go ahead and right click this to make it point down. Not strictly necessary, I don't think, but might as well. There we go. And yeah, that's looking good. Cool. How are we doing on power? We are doing fine. We're gaining power, which is good. So currently still not needing a higher tier reactor, which is nice, which makes sense. Right now, we're not using much power. I don't think these centrifuges use a ton. This is using 1,000 on its own, but we're producing 12,000 and currently not really using much else. And then back over here, we can then go ahead and use that netherite scrap to make more netherite. And of course, we can use that netherite to make more netherite blocks. I think we might finally be at a point where we can look to starting to make the elite casing. So for this, we need the previous casing with redstone and blocks of netherite. So we'll take these. We've got 37, which again might not be enough. I think we might need 39, but again, we can keep taking even more ancient comb and processing that down. And we could even go so far actually here. We might as well, given that we've set this all up, we could go so far as to get some more patterns, which is another thing we should probably teach our system to make. It's probably going to be quite useful if our system can just make these blank patterns for us. And so with a little bit of patternception here, we can do this and this, and we can kind of teach our patterns to make more patterns, which is good. And so now if I want patterns, I can say, give me, 16 patterns, next, and start, and it's going to go ahead and do all of the crafting and prerequisites that are required to make those 16 patterns, and then we can take those 16 patterns and place them back into our pattern terminal here. And with this, we can go ahead and teach our system how to smelt the scrap. Let's say that 1 of these equals 1 scrap, again, in processing mode, like that, in code. We'll then place that over in here, like this, and then back over here, the final piece of the puzzle is just taking this and teaching our system how to do this recipe right here in code. And then I guess actually we could even take it one step further, right? And we could say, make the block of netherite as well in code, and we could put that in like this. And so now, if we want more blocks of netherite, we can just request them, because it should be able to do that for us. In fact, let's have a look. If I wanted to upgrade all of my centrifuges, I think it's 39 blocks of netherite per centrifuge, which means if we wanted to get 3 elite centrifuges, we would need 117 blocks of netherite. Currently, we have got 37 blocks of netherite, which means we need 80 more for this to work. So if I go ahead and middle mouse click and I type in 80, can we do it? We totally can. Almost. We've got enough ancient debris. We've got enough gold. We can make enough netherite scrap. The problem that we run into is that we don't have enough bytes. We would need 13,000 bytes here to make this work, as opposed to the 1,000 bytes that we have available to us. And so it's at this point in time that we would have to look at upgrading to something like the 16K storage crafting here to make this work. For this, it's not really too difficult. It's just a case, really, of making a ton of 1K storage components. This, not particularly difficult to make, but is basically a case of doing this recipe multiple times over. We need 3 of the 1K storage components to make 1 4K, and then we need 3 of the 4K storage components to make 1 16K. And so essentially, we just have to do this recipe 9 times, which should be pretty straightforward, actually. And 9 1K ME storage components later, back over here, can we make 3 4K ME storage components? We can. And then can we make 1 16K ME storage component? We can. And then from there, we can make another crafting housing, which is this guy here, the crafting unit. And of course, we can craft that like this to get a 16K storage. And you got 2 options here. You can either put this down just anywhere like this, and now we have 2 CPUs with which to craft. Alternatively, you can connect it to your pre-existing CPU. So if I do this, this now takes up 2 channels. These 2 individually each take up 1 channel. If I put it over here, this now acts as 1 multi-block CPU that only takes up 1 channel and has a combined total of 17,000 bytes. Real quick, the Twitch chat has pointed out that I've messed up over here. These 2 patterns I didn't encode correctly, because you'll see here that we're still in the processing mode. We need to be in the crafting mode. And a quick way to tell in here if you're in the right mode or not, you'll see that this one says crafts 1 netherite block, this one says creates 1 netherite block. So if it says creates, you got to put it in a machine. If it says craft, you got to put it into a molecular assembler. For us, clear this and clear this. All I need to do is go ahead and reteach this recipe, making sure that we're in crafting mode. If you try and craft and it's in the wrong mode, it just won't work. It won't do it, unfortunately. So now that we have that, though, we should be able to go back and request those extra 80 blocks. So can I get these made? I can. And now, because we have 13,000 bytes, we can select this CPU here, which you'll see has 17,408 bytes available to it. Start, and it's going to go. Cool. And again, if we really wanted to make things a tiny bit faster, we could take our acceleration cards here and kind of place those into this molecular assembler. Over here, auto sort does want to be on, so we can make this much faster as well and use it to its full capacity. And over here, we should see this being much, much faster now in terms of its crafting. Cool. And then, of course, all we have to do once all of the netherite is ready is take it all and put it into our energizing orb, with blocks of redstone and the old centrifuge casing. So I'm going to go ahead and, for example, tear down this back reactor here. Let's start here and work our way forwards. The next question, we could start to run into a power problem here because we're going to be using a lot of power, but how long does this take is the question. It takes a little bit of time is the answer. So we can put netherite in one of these. We can put redstone in another. We could probably do with getting a third modular router here if we really want to automate this. And for that, we're also going to want to get another regulator augment, which should be very straightforward. Now we've got a ton of redstone, and we did make those redstone torches in bulk a little while back, which is good. I'll also make a new sender module here. That's probably going to need another piston because I never have pistons. Another one of those things that we should probably teach our system to make so we don't have to keep doing this manually. It'd be nice to be able to do this automatically. Let's set this to export to the bank with the regulator augment, and we'll set it to 1. Perfect. So if we do this and this, we can now put the casing in here, and that should, in theory, I think, put everything in. Of course, all we need to do is make sure that this bank machine here actually pulls the casing. And now, just like before, we can just leave this doing its thing, and it is going to slowly but surely craft all of the centrifuge casing into elite centrifuge casing, which we can then use to build our elite centrifuge. The only other thing then is the elite centrifuge controller, and for that, we just need elite casing, blocks of netherite, eyes of ender, and ender pearls. Super easy. We just need netherite, and the netherite, of course, is being made, and it's actually coming in surprisingly quickly. Okay, and not too long later, we've got 36 elite centrifuge casing, sorry, 37, I guess, elite centrifuge casing, and so now, I think we should be good to go. Can I make the elite centrifuge controller? I believe we can. We just need the regular centrifuge controller, which is currently over here. Let's go ahead and steal this guy. And then now back over here, we should be able to slot that perfectly in the center. I believe the system is still going with the blocks of netherite. Oh, actually, I think it is done. It is. Cool. And so now, I think we're good to go. We need to rebuild the structure over here in the exact same way that we did before, but now with the elite centrifuge controller instead of the standard centrifuge controller. Again, in the exact same spot on the second level there, and then just the rest of these would have been a bit easier, actually, if I had a building wand, but this, I believe, is an elite centrifuge, which is now capable of processing even more honeycombs, which is perfect. I assume we can probably hold even more honey as well. We do need to replace down this flux point. Thankfully, these do retain their configuration when you break and replace them, but yeah, that's much faster than this in terms of processing blocks, and it can do so many more of them, which is fantastic. And so even with just one of these, I think we're going to be able to handle quite an increase in apiary production, because already we weren't really saturating the 3 that we had. And this is another perfect example of where we can put autocrafting to good use. If we go ahead and get another ME interface here, we can throw it down over on here, for example, to give us access to even more patterns that we could put in, and we could use this to teach our system how to craft up the apiary. So the apiary here is made with 4 tier 4 beehives, which needs the tier 3 beehive, which needs the tier 2 beehive, and the tier 1 beehive, and the regular beehive. The regular beehive we can encode like this, and we can throw it in over here, just making sure we are in crafting mode. We are indeed. Good stuff. And then we can go and teach the rest of these here. So we can encode this. Boom. Whack that in as well. And then from there, we can encode this. Now, by default, it says item substitutions, prevent substitutions of input components. And you'll see if we go to one of our other patterns, it says use substitutions, no. We want to swap that to allow substitutions of input components. Essentially, that's going to allow it to use any combs that we have in here to make the hive, as opposed to specifically requiring that it use tin combs, which I think is ideal. One thing we probably want to do going forward, and I think that we will do, is we're going to tear down this bee apartment complex. We're going to build more apiaries over on this side. I think we want to dedicate one of our apiaries to honeycombs that we're not going to process via the centrifuges. Those being honeycombs like wood. Right now, we are very low on wood, but if we get a wood bee, we can automate the production of wood combs, and these wood combs don't go in a centrifuge. We just want them in the system so that we can craft a large amount of wood whenever we like. We could even go so far as to teach our system how to craft that wood so that we don't have to bother with it. On top of that, we could also maybe do with getting cobblestone in there as well. Cobblestone you can process in the centrifuge, but I think cobblestone would be useful to have just so that we have a comb that we can use in these kind of crafts. Because right now it's going to use random combs, which is fine, but I think going forward it would be beneficial if we had like a specific comb. If we could just specify, use the cobblestone comb, and we had a ton of it, and we didn't have to worry about using it up. I think that would be ideal. But if we just go ahead and do this for all of these, again, making sure that item substitution is enabled on all of them, I think in theory we should now be able to just request an apiary, and the system should in theory be able to make it. The only thing we're missing, of course, is wood. And we could also at this point look as well at upgrading our apiaries, I think, to a higher tier. Again, whilst I was waiting for all the centrifuge casing to come in, we did get a few more nether stars. I'm not entirely certain how many we need for a tier 2 apiary, but if we go ahead and encode this pattern here, and again drop it in over here, can I get a tier 2 apiary? Let's put the logs back in there so that they are usable by the system. The answer would appear to be yes. The only thing we're missing is enough combs to make it happen. And in terms of combs, really the fastest way for us to get more combs is just to turn this thing off. But I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll request another tier 1 apiary if we have enough combs for that, which we do, and we'll hit start. That's going to make the tier 1 apiary for us, which is perfect. Look at that. It's doing all of the little microcrafts that we previously had to do, and we can then take the made apiary much faster than we did before, and we can use this over here for those aforementioned combs. And so I think what I'll do between streams, I'll go ahead and I'll tear this building down. I'll build more slots for more apiaries so we can get more bees down. And we'll have this first apiary be for things like wood and like comb. And instead of having those go over into the centrifuges, we'll have them go down into their own storage drawers, probably their own compacting drawers, so that we can then going forward, maybe tweak these recipes to use just cobblestone comb. And we can also tweak the system to allow it to autocraft things like wood. Now, a lot of what's here is going to get moved as well. Of course, I'll also probably move this cable under the platform between streams as well, using the jetpack that we have, and we'll also dedicate an area, I think, to autocrafting, because, as I mentioned, this is not ideal. We probably want to have maybe just one molecular assembler per ME interface to kind of maximize crafting speed, and we also probably want to set up a dedicated area for it. Maybe out back over here we could set up a little space for a bunch of molecular assemblers and ME interfaces, just so they're not kind of haphazardly set in the middle of the platform like they are currently, but of course that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Sky Bees 2 there.